Testosterone, in the way that it works neurologically, it builds the foundation for your mental health and your neurotransmission to operate properly. So it basically fixes the foundation of how your body and your brain works, but it doesn't change who you are inherently. When you're wanting to make a change in your life, whether it's wanting to improve your relationships or improve your discipline or improve your physical health or whatever it is you want to do, you have to be able to exert your willpower.
How much did your mental health improve on TRT and how long did it take?
Ooh, that's a good question. Exponentially. This is such a good, perfect setup to all the stuff I usually talk about. So for people who've seen me speak before, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I like the sound of the record, so I'm going to keep it broken. I've been on TRT now for, I think, 6 or 7 years. And I like to say that there's 3 milestones when it comes to TRT. There's the weeks, there's the months, and then there's the years. And in terms of how my mental health changed on TRT, a lot of the stuff that I speak about online is stuff that I learned from experience. So I'm just further down the road that everyone else is walking down. And I didn't know shit when I was walking down that road either. So I learned the hard way. And I hope that people can learn from my mistakes, but also just not have to go through the same thing I went through. And I definitely expected TRT to do the work on me or do the work for me for the first couple of years, for sure. There was definitely a point where I was like, well, I've been walking around with like Giga Chad level testosterone levels for the last couple of years, and I still feel like an absolute total wimp on the inside. Why? And I was annoyed at that, and it made me frustrated because I didn't understand. And what I realized was that testosterone, in the way that it works neurologically, which is one of my main areas of interest in it in terms of how it works in the brain, it doesn't really androgenize you in terms of like masculinize your psyche per se past a certain point. What it does is it builds the foundation for your mental health and your neurotransmission to operate properly. So it basically fixes the foundation of how your body and your brain works, but it doesn't change who you are inherently. What changes who you are, and then thus your mental health, is what you do or what you have done for the past X amount of time. So the thing that really allowed me to change my mental health and improve my mental health to the point that I can help others with their mental health is I adopted all the habits and all the processes and all the routines that I wish I had adopted a year or two prior. And that was the big thing that changed for me, was the consistent application of basically having the habits and doing the things that the best version of myself would do. And doing that consistently over time ultimately allowed me to feel internally the way I wanted to feel, which, as someone who used to teach mindfulness, what I value is feeling. And we will always have fears, we will always have anxieties, we'll always wake up some days more depressed than others, because that's life. It doesn't matter what your testosterone levels are, you're still a human. But it made me feel calm. It made the voice inside my head not be so critical and so deprecating and so fearful. And it allowed me to be confident in myself. But what allowed me to be confident was the fact that I'd spent a few years deliberately building competence. And that's, a quote from Jordan Peterson, is competence builds confidence. So I would say that my mental health has improved dramatically. When I was in my early 20s, I was in a touring band. I was, doing digital marketing, did a couple of different things at uni, running my own business. From the outside, I looked quite good, but on the inside, I always felt very afraid and always felt very timid and always felt very anxious about nothing, just afraid of everything, just learned fear. So TRT gave me the foundation to be able to put the practices in to become the guy who overcame that, but it took years. So I would say that my mental health has improved exponentially beyond where it was before, to the point that I wouldn't even recognize my psyche beforehand, but it took a good 5 or 6 years of intentional work. And the first 2 years, I expected that work to happen by default, and it most certainly did not.
So you taught mindfulness. I've heard you talk about this a little bit, but I want to expand upon it here because it's so important, and it's something that people kind of just want to skip over. It's kind of like the stretching at the end of a workout. People's like, I don't really need that. I just keep plowing through, And I'm a Pilates instructor. I used to own a Pilates and a yoga studio. So I don't feel that way. I find it very important to my overall health and my mental being. But a lot of people don't fully understand that. So maybe let's expand upon your experience with mindfulness and how you taught that and the importance.
Sure. So I used to teach secular, so non-religious based meditation and mindfulness workshops for parents and teachers to be able to teach it to kids. And the vision of the organization that I was working for, I was also doing some marketing for the organization, was that mindfulness was a critical skill for children to have. And I think what's very important about mindfulness is recognizing mindfulness as a skill. And just like if a child can't tie their shoes, we don't assume that there's something wrong with the child. We just assume the child hasn't been taught how to tie their shoes, or maybe they need to be taught a couple of times. I still tie mine with bunny ears. I think that's a fine way to tie your shoes, but you have to learn the skills. And some of us are better at tying our shoes than others from the bat. I wasn't. And some of us are better at mindfulness than others, and some of us suck, but we can all learn the skill. And what mindfulness is mindfulness is the mental skill of attention. It's being able to focus your mind on what you want to focus it on. It doesn't mean that your mind will not race off. It doesn't mean that you won't get distracted. It doesn't mean that you won't think unproductive or unhelpful thoughts sometimes. But mindfulness is the skill of being able to focus your mind on what you want to focus it on. And it's kind of like getting strong from going to the gym. You go to the gym, you pick up the weights and you put them back down so that you can be strong in day-to-day life or look a certain way or carry in all the groceries in one trip. And the reason why you go to meditate, kind of like going to the gym for your brain, is so that you can have the skill of mindfulness day to day, which is where you're able to, one, choose what you want to focus your attention on. A huge amount of issues that guys face that I work with, including myself in the past, is we lack the skill and the ability to do the work that we don't want to do to achieve the outcome that we want to achieve. Sometimes that gets diagnosed as inattentive ADHD. A lot of the time it's just a lack of discipline, and it's a lack of the skill of saying, I don't want to do this sucks. But part of being an adult is having to sometimes do work that you don't want to do to get the outcomes that you want. Difficult skill, but can be done. The other thing that's very important for mindfulness, though, is being able to regulate your emotions. And this is something that I see a lot of people lacking, both children and adults. And a lot of the time when we're not able to regulate our emotions, we end up saying or doing things that we regret after the fact because we didn't create a space between the stimulus and the response. And when you are able to do that, you're able to consciously practice sympathy and empathy, which are important for relationships. But you're also able to override your impulses, such as saying you're going to get up at 4:30 the next morning to go and do that workout, and then the alarm goes off, and then you go, oh, fuck that, snooze, done. Mindfulness isn't going to make you not hit the snooze button, but it's going to make you still get up after you hit it because that's what you said you would do and you're going to keep your word. And I think when you're wanting to make a change in your life, whether it's wanting to improve your relationships or improve your discipline or improve your physical health or whatever it is you want to do, you have to be able to exert your willpower. You have to be able to say, I'm going to do this and then do that. And the way that you follow through on that, potentially, when it also comes down to delaying gratification, is being able to keep your word to yourself and being able to override your impulses. And this is a very important part of developing executive function, which is what the prefrontal cortex is for. And it seems that a lot of people, in terms of how they've been brought up, whether it's from a very distracted culture, overstimulated with electronics, just smashed full of junk food, hormone dysfunction, all these things layered, a lot of people seem to have issues with executive function. And I think that if you have issues with executive function over the trajectory of your life, you could end up in circumstances or derailing the trajectory of where you're heading to basically ending up somewhere that you don't want to be. So I think mindfulness is very important to be able to, one, have a good relationship with that voice inside your head. There's nothing worse than laying down at the end of the day and that voice inside your head's just torturing you. But the important part of that is taking a look and going, well, what is this? Why is this so critical? What's wrong here? And actually sitting down with yourself and going through what you're thinking, why you're feeling, where all this is coming from, and getting to the bottom of it. And then learning to put that shit aside and just focusing on the here and now, so that when you are having dinner with your wife, or you're watching a movie with a friend, or you're doing something you enjoy, or you're literally sniffing the flowers or walking through nature, you have the ability to actually put all that shit aside and just enjoy the present moment, because otherwise life passes you by because you're always just worried about shit and you never get to enjoy yourself. So I think that it's extremely important for all aspects of mental health, and it's ultimately the foundation to be able to be a conscious, productive human being.
If you've just started TRT, it is completely normal to feel overwhelmed and confused. There's a lot of new territory to cover, and there is a lot of conflicting information. I wrote TRT 101 so that you can have everything that you need to know in an instruction manual in one place that you can refer back to, that you can have all the questions answered before they even come up. TRT 101 is my best practice approach for TRT from start to finish, and it contains everything that you need to avoid all the challenges and pitfalls that I've seen come up in my clients over the last 5 years. You can check it out via the link below.
I'm really, really worried about this in children because of the way YouTube and TikTok is geared towards, well, everybody at this point, but towards our children with these 30-second quick clips. I mean, it's training these brains to be constantly stimulated. Next topic, next video, new people, new. And I'm like, man, these kids are really, really going to struggle to be present and to learn how to be mindful and meditate and all these things. I mean, I'm the parent that makes my child, I have the Aura ring. We both wear them. He's 12, but I make him do a meditation at night before bed because I'm like, no, you have got to slow the mind down. I mean, you're playing sports, you're at school, you're on TikTok. Well, he doesn't have TikTok, but you're watching YouTube videos, et cetera, et cetera. The mind has got to quiet itself. So are there any apps that you recommend or like easier ways for people to be able to kind of ease in to learn mindfulness and meditation?
Yeah, absolutely. So I look at meditation kind of like training in the gym. It's like if you've never gone to lift weights, please get a personal trainer because otherwise you'll just learn things wrong and you hurt yourself. I don't think you'll hurt yourself by meditating without a PT. You might just get bored. But kind of like what you mentioned with stretching and Pilates, I think mindfulness is such a good example with that because like if you stretch and it feels horrible and you suck at stretching, that's not a signal to go, oh, stretching's not for you. That's to say you need to do more of this. That's why it feels horrible. Meditation's the same. So it's important to have a guide to teach you the skills because focusing your mind on nothing is very simple, but very difficult. It requires you sitting down, doing nothing. It's free, or the app will cost whatever, but it's a free process. But it's very boring, which makes it very difficult, especially if you've never been still with your mind before. So the best thing to do is to find a narrator who doesn't piss you off. If you get 2 or 3 minutes into it and you go, fuck, this person's voice is annoying, not for you. Try something else. So you got to just find a voice that you like. I like Headspace, Andy from Headspace. Some people say it's too wafty or it's too... I like that it's wafty, so I like Headspace. Some people like Waking Up by Sam Harris. It's not really for me. It's much more logical, straight to the point, neuroscience, time to meditate. For people who don't like Headspace, they often really like Waking Up. So I recommend getting the trial of both of those. And if you've got kids, there's an app called Smiling Minds. That's a really good one as well because it's got programs for children. The other thing that's really helpful, one is because as soon as I say it's a Navy SEAL thing, all the guys are like, oh, fuck yeah, I'll do that. There's a skill called box breathing. And if you search on YouTube, like box breathing, there'll be like animations, which is like breathe in for 5, hold for 5, breathe out for 5, hold for 5, which will slow your breath down to 3 breaths per minute. And that's like a scientifically validated way to drop into the parasympathetic nervous system as quickly as possible. So that's a way to do it for guys who are like, I want the quickest, fastest, most efficient way to learn this skill. That's a good way to do it as well. But I think the best intro to meditation, I used to do this in workshops. I've probably done it 50 times in my life. And it's great for people who've done it a bunch of times, never done it before, used to do it, and they're coming back to it. You jump on YouTube and you search Alan Watts 15-minute guided meditation. And it's like an explanation of meditation while you're meditating to it. It's a great one, really good. Just click the one that says no ads. Some genius put an ad in the middle of a 15-minute guided meditation. So don't click that one. Click the one with the ad. But that one's phenomenal. So yeah, Alan Watts guided meditation, box breathing on YouTube, or Headspace, or Waking Up. They're my recommendations. Or Smiling Minds for kids.
The tricky thing with testosterone that we have to look at is that testosterone is good for you up to the point that it's not. A lot of the anecdotal outcomes as well, really conflates bioidentical testosterone with anabolic steroids. Finding something productive and stressful that's got that nice balance that if you got out the other side of it, you'd be like, that would be meaningful. When I was going through my rehabilitation for my brain injury, if it wasn't for the testosterone, I wouldn't have gotten through it, because that was just this insurmountable period of what I would call living hell.